It's not needed, I guess. But
so
for the camera, I guess.
Yes, for the recording you need to have
For
the mic,
recording,
and I
okay.
think this is the mic you can use, right?
No, I'm fine with this.
You're fine with it.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks a lot for coming in here. I mean, after the pandemic, this is the very first time I'm talking in front of an in-person crowd. Given that my company is completely remote now, so thank you for everybody for coming in, and thank you for all the organizers for providing an opportunity for me to talk about the critical test environment topic. Right, so we will learn during this presentation, right? I mean, we will learn about what the challenges are with test environment. How do we deal and overcome the challenges with the test environment, and why test environment is very critical for us. And as a tester, how do you build and manage your own test environment, right? So ask this question, run in your mind this question, right? You are a tester, so are you in a position today to build your own test environment, right? So if you look at, there are two ends of the spectrum, right? On one end, you know, you have a requirement for a test environment, right? I mean, you have set up everything to perform testing, and you have a requirement for creating your own test environment, or you need a test environment, right? So what do? You run to your manager and tell them, hey manager, I have this requirement for a test environment, I have everything ready, can you please coordinate and get me the test environment, right? I mean, that's what you do, right? At the other end of the spectrum, right, you will be a tester where, you will not only run to your manager and say, hey manager, I need a test environment, but rather you would say, hey manager, these are the test environments I would need, and this is how I could create my own test environment, and this is how I could manage the test environment, and this is how we could plan for the test environment, right? So what I want all of you to take away from this presentation is, after you finish up with this session, I want everybody to have clear, at least some thoughts and ideas around, as a tester, how we could build your own test environment, how you could manage your own test environment, or at least at least get to a level where you are comfortable talking about that, right? So that's where I would want all of you to kind of take away at the end of this presentation. So I also had this similar question many years back, when I was working on a project where everything was running smoothly. I mean, we had budget figured out, we have resourcing figured out, we had bunch of smart people to actually deliver what we need. But the biggest challenge that we had was, we were completely dependent on an external team to provide our test environment, right? So I could not really believe the fact that, my success was actually dependent on somebody else, right? I'll give you certain examples of the ordeal that we used to go through. There were certain instances where for carrying out testing successfully, we had to go back and forth between the database backup and restores, right? So typically, if I do database backup and restore myself, it would take like 5 to 10 minutes. But I was dependent on this external team. My team was dependent on this external team, where we had to put in a ticket, and we had to wait for them to restore the database and backups. That used to take somewhere between 24 hours to 48 hours, right? So that's ridiculous, right? I mean, that's not acceptable, right? And also, when you needed a log file, right, you had to put in a ticket, wait for 1 to 2 hours. And sometimes literally you had to go and beg in front of them, restore this database, give me this log file, right? I mean, that's totally ridiculous, as per me. So that's when I started to think, how can we cut down this dependence? Why do we have to depend on, why do we have to be dependent on somebody? Why would somebody else define my successful, right? I mean, as a team, we are wonderful, we have everybody, but except for test environment, how can I fail, right? I mean, that's when I started to think, how could I make my team self-sufficient with test environment needs, right? So, two ways to solve that. One way to solve that is right. I mean, that's very, very easy. That's in fact, very easy, and I'll teach you right away how to solve that. My wife is into spirituality. She reads a lot about spirituality and spiritual books. I happened to read one of the book where they talk about gratitude a lot, right? If you say thank you, thank you, thank you 3 times for whatever you have today or whatever you want to get, right? That will keep coming back in again and again in abundance, right? So one way to solve your test environment challenge is say thank you, thank you, thank you 3 times, and you have got the test environment, right? You will get it. That is the easiest way to get test environment, right? But I know it's not so easy the way I'm explaining here, but we will look at the other way of solving test environment challenges, which is that I will dive right into this presentation, which will offer all the details. So let's understand what the impacts are, without test environment. What is going to happen without test environment, right? I mean, I'm sure each of you might have gone to the ordeal where, without test environment, how frustrated you would be, and how you would be, screaming and blaming somebody for everything not having the test environment, right? So, couple of things, it's going to impact team productivity. I mean, team productivity is going to go down. I mean, you could have best performance testing script written, you could have best automation testing script written, you could have best postman collection written, right? But without having a right test environment, how good it is, what good it is, right? It doesn't really make any sense at all, right? Sometimes what happens is, common services team or IT team, they just throw one environment to you and carry all your testing on this, right? I mean, how does it matter whether you are running on a virtual machine, you are running on a container, whether you are running on a standalone box, how does it matter, right? They don't even get that point, right? I mean, they don't understand why do we need to run specific things on containers, why do we need to run specific things on VM, why do we think we need to run specific, specific things on, environment which are configured in some specific way, right? They don't understand it. They never get it. I mean, even today, companies which say that they have 100% DevOps, they are 100% SaaS, they still struggle to give the environments you need, right? For example, if you need an environment which would restore from a particular database copy, which would have millions and millions of data records, they would not have the pipeline. They would say, we have a pipeline which would build golden images and get the base environment and build everything on top of it. That's not something what we need. I mean, we want something that is tailor-made, that will meet our specific requirements. Right? So productivity is down. I mean, absolutely. I mean, testers morale will come down. I mean, you will be damn frustrated waiting for the environment. You will be pretty pissed off, without having the right environment that you will need, right? So, and also product release would get impacted. What you plan for 4 months, it's going to take 6 months because you're waiting on the environment, right? And customer success is impacted, and of course revenues are directly impacted, and many more. I can keep talking about the test environment's impact, and I'm sure each of you would know what the impact without having the right kind of test environment. Why are test environments critical? Again, test environments are very critical because they define everything in today's era. In today's era, speed is everything. You want to deliver faster. You want to give features to the customers. In more quicker way. Everything. Speed is everything today. I mean, you are competing with. You are competing with other companies where speed is everything, right? If speed is everything, you need to keep up with your testing. You need to keep up with right kind of environment. So they all they're all connected to each other, right? So it's very important, right? So faster release to market, faster feedback, overall success depending on test environments, right? So and many more reasons why test environments are critical. So what kind of test environments am I talking about here? So it could be any test environment. What I've seen is, once we have built this culture and once we have figured out how to deal with this, developers have come to us. Developers have come to my team asking for, can you give me this, specific test environment? Can you help me, quickly spin up an environment where I can validate my things, right? So this is not a finite list. This is not limited to the list that I'm showing you here, but I'm talking about any kind of environment. I mean, not just test environment, any kind of environment. I'll quickly touch upon, some of the environments that are, very, very critical, very, very important for us. Performance testing environment. So performance testing environment, as you all know that, it's extremely important, right? It's extremely important where, performance testing is a data gathering activity. You need, big volumes of data. You need to go back and forth between, different, database backups, restores. And performance testing is like, you run something, you figure out something is wrong, you fix it, you change back the configuration, and you look at the logs. So without having access to the performance environment, it's highly impossible to do complete justice for the work that you will be doing at the performance testing, right? Another important thing. Okay, sorry. The next one, automation testing environment. Again, automation testing environment, a very, very critical piece. I'm just not talking about a system where you deploy your product, but also I'm talking about all the underlying infrastructure environments that could be needed. For example, an automation testing environment, right? I mean, you had to run your Selenium grid. You had to do parallel execution. So how would you set up that, infrastructure, right? I mean, if you ask IT, they will give you one generic environment or infrastructure and tell them, go figure out and solve it yourself, right? But as a tester, you would know, what specifically you would need in terms of, automation. It could be UI automation, it could be API automation, it could be, mocking environments, it could be cross-browser, cross-platform, cross-mobile, right? So a lot of requirements, a lot of underlying, infrastructure, and that's very important on the automation testing. E2E environment. So E2E environment are also extremely critical, given that we are moving from monolith to microservice-based architecture. So microservice-based architecture involves a lot of, integration and the need for end-to-end environment. Companies struggle with that. I mean, they can quickly create standalone environments, but when it comes to connecting different parts of the environment, they struggle with that literally. And even if you have 1 to 2 environments, that itself is a great thing, right? Especially now I've seen where your web application needs to talk to backend, and backend might be connected to an
I'll check. Can you start again? Yeah. I think some event.
I'm not even focusing on that.
Okay. Even I was engrossed.
Yeah, E2E environment, right? So, I've seen in my companies where you have legacy product, you have, modern-based web architecture, you have microservices, you have NoSQL database, that has to talk to, something like an hub and spoke ethos data model, or it might have to, talk to each other using, API calls, or it gets very complex, right? I mean, E2E is not a joke. I mean, if people are really talking about real E2E environment, it's not a joke. They have to experience it. Integration environment, right? I mean, like I said again, unit test after unit test, integrating and looking for right integration environment is again, of course, a challenge. Especially microservice-based architecture, people talk a lot about microservice-based architecture without realizing what does it really take to build an integrated and E2E environment in terms of, testing microservices. Device form, right? I mean, you have browser stack, you have Lambda, you have everything, right? But device form is easy to build. You can build your own device form, right? I mean, I've seen companies where they have built device forms from scratch, right? Get couple of racks, get couple of mobiles, look for some open source, or you can, build your software, plug it everything and figure out how that will be shared across. I know it sounds very easy the way I'm explaining, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. The reason I'm stating why all these things have to be done and why testers have to get involved is nobody like you can understand what our requirements are, right? It's like somebody covering it up for us. I mean somebody coming and talking for us, right, without actually understanding what the real requirements are, right? Production-like environment. So we all talk about, we should test, on the production environment. We need to test an environment where, it's replica of production, but people don't realize how difficult is it to get production-like environment. Extremely, extremely difficult, but doable, right? And production-like environment, why is it important? Because of many, many reasons, right? I mean, what we typically do is we conduct, testing in the earlier phases, and we release the product only to realize that in the production environment, oh, I did not know that, customers are using the environment. I did not know that customers are using my product in this specific way. I did not know that customers are going to, test it on the production, in this specific way, right? I mean, that's the biggest gap that we have, right? I mean, without understanding, without realizing how things get, how product functions, how product is being used in the production environment, it's extremely hard, and production-like environment is very, very important for teams to succeed. Container, non-container environments, you will have requirements where you will have to build container environments, test it on non-containers, deploy it on them, and especially when it comes to chaos engineering, performance engineering, and a lot of other testing types, it becomes extremely important. Lastly, security environments, security testing environments are also very, very important. So, like I said, I'm not focusing on just your product setup, but also trying to touch upon how important it is to create the underlying infrastructure to support everything, to support all kind of testing, to support all kind of verification, validation, or whatever you want to call that. But at the end of the day, drive customer success, right? I mean, without all these things, you will not be able to drive customer success. Your product will never get successful. So who should solve the problem, right? Now that I've spoken about, what the challenges are and why is it critical, now who should solve the problem? Should companies solve the problem? Company says, I've hired the smart people, you're the smart person, go figure out, right? If I'm going to solve the problem, why did I hire you, right? You have to figure it out. Should we go and ask our beloved developers to solve the problem? They're absolutely, very, very busy, right? I mean, they're gone deep in their development work, and with today's era of DevOps, SaaS, and everything, right? Everything is being done to the developers. I mean, not just writing codes, they have to do unit testing, they have to do integration testing, they have to write Selenium scripts, they have to do performance testing, they have to do, a lot of other, activities as part of, so-called, DevOps, SaaS, and everything mentality, right? So developers are buried in their own, Should executive leaders, CTOs, CEOs solve our problem? No, I don't think so. They will be able to solve it. And lastly, how about Scrum Masters and Project Managers? Can they solve our problem? No. They are very busy with their planning, agile ceremonies, what went wrong, what did not go well, right? So who should solve the problem? Of course, us, testers. We have to solve our own problem, right? I mean, how can you say that I'm not responsible for my problem? I mean, it's your area, it's your problem. So you have to figure out how you're going to solve this problem, right? It's like telling BBMP, please clear all the mess that rain has created, right? I mean, if you're traveling on this road and if you are leaving area, you also have some shared responsibility, right? So likewise, test environments majorly are being used by testers, so testers have definitely responsibility towards solving this problem. And like I said, nobody better than us understand what do we need in terms of test environment, right? I mean, we absolutely know for running UI test what kind of environment I need, what type of configurations I need. For running performance test, I know, what kind of environment I need. Should I run it on VM? Should I run it on containers? Should I run it on cloud? Should I run it on on-prem, right? I mean, you know what your requirements are. So there is nobody better than testers to solve this problem. So testers have to collaborate with developers, DevOps folks, architects, or whoever is involved to solve our whole problem. Now let's look at how do we solve, right? I mean, enough of preaching, right? I've done a lot of preaching in terms of, testers have to solve the problem, right? So let's look at how do we solve the problem. So firstly, I keep hearing, testers being, black box tester, white box tester, and other kinds of tester, right? So what I keep telling is, be a glass box tester, right? I mean, what I mean by glass box tester is, you got to understand how system under the hood works, right? I mean, you just cannot, for example, right? If you have an web application, right? You're not supposed to say that I'm going to test few things on the UI without understanding how things work under the hood, right? So what I mean is, as a tester, it's very important to understand how things work under the hood, right? You need to understand, how is your product deployed. For example, what web server do we use, what app server do we use, and how the deployment happens, what backend you have, what database you have, whether NoSQL, SQL, what caching mechanism do we use, and do we have any queuing system, do we have any notification system? Try to understand that, right? Go deep into the product, go deep into the system, try to understand how exactly system works, how exactly the system is built, right? That's extremely, extremely important, right? Keep aside for a moment building about test infrastructure. Knowing about how things work under the hood is definitely important for all of you as a tester, or definitely important for anybody who's going to work on the product, right? So try to do that first. Be a glass box tester, right? Second thing, bring in a culture. As managers, what we have done in the past is, bring in that culture of shared responsibility on the test infrastructure and environments. People have to understand that they have responsibility towards environment, and we have to inculcate a culture where everybody understand the importance of knowing about test environments. Everybody understand how things work under the hood. Everybody understand what web server, what application server, and everything, right? So you need to start leading by an example, right? I mean, like I mentioned in the past, many years back when I had this problem, I led by example. I had absolutely no clue about infrastructure. I had absolutely no clue about a lot of things. So I started taking upon myself. I mean, that's how you all have to lead by example, right? I mean, nothing is difficult. You are writing a lot of Selenium code, you are writing a lot of performance testing code, you are writing a lot of accessibility code, Java expert, Python expert. Here we are talking about some declarative, Terraform, Ansible, not to, put all that down, but what I'm trying to say, it's not difficult, right? So, get to bring that culture inside the team. Bring that culture. And also what we have done in the past is, we did start off, hiring one or two people who were very good at, DevOps, environment management, and everything, right? So that way, we didn't have to go back to the centralized team and wait for 36 hours or 2 weeks to get something done, but rather they were part of the team and they were available round the clock to help with our environment lead. That's one part. The other part is they were also trying to help testers understand, what forms the system, how does it work under the hood. How do we, deploy something on a WebLogic or Tomcat? How do we do, restores and backup, and how do we eventually get into automation, right? Building that culture by having those teams, right? We also, did provide training on application architecture. What does it take to complete an environment? So there's a lot of, KTs and those things that we also did, right? And also we got to a point where we started training our people on, AWS, little bit of Ansible, Terraform. Excuse me. The key takeaway from this slide is, I'm not telling you to become a DevOps expert. I'm not telling you to be an expert, be a Terraform, Ansible, or cloud expert. But get to a level where, you are comfortable saying that, you can build small environments that you would need for your requirement, right? I mean, that's the point I'm trying to make here. And what I've also seen is, a lot of testers actually love this approach. I mean, they love the approach where, they had complete freedom and they had complete confidence to build their own test environment. I mean, it was so much fun. Trust me. I mean, it's not too overwhelming. It's not too difficult. I mean, so people did enjoy. That's what I've seen. When they were able to fiddle around with their own environments, when they were able to create their own environments, when they were able to deploy, something in Tomcat and WebLogic, they were very, very happy. And trust me, this is only going to add a lot of value for your career. It's going to, increase your remuneration, and it's going to really, really help you a lot. So, how do we really solve? So, cloud has a lot of opportunities for us, right? Cloud provides everything. I mean, you could literally spin up, servers in 5 to 10 minutes. You could, get Tomcat with Logic and whatever you need, very, very quickly. And likewise, containers, today Docker containers, we have Kubernetes cluster. We are also getting into unikernels. Unikernels is a very, very interesting topic, which I can kind of touch it. The difference between container and unikernels is, unikernels does not need even OS to actually work. It packs all the system libraries that is needed and it directly runs in hypervisor. So that way it is very good in terms of performance. It's highly secured. It takes, it completely gives an isolation. And also Jenkins pipeline, you could have Jenkins or any other tool. You have to figure out, eventually once you start doing manually, it's time to start, building automation around that. That becomes extremely important. So you should not really rush towards building, coding on Terraform, Ansible, and start building test environments, but rather try to do it manually, right? I mean, manually spin up an AWS instance and try to deploy on WebLogic and Tomcat and connect to backend and database server and see how it goes, right? So once you have small ones, then get into automation using Jenkins pipeline and those kind of things. So device form, I touched upon it. I have seen companies and people build their own device form, and trust me, that gives them a lot of flexibility and it's cost effective to a certain extent. Serverless, everything as a code, those are also very, very critical in terms of solving the environment challenges. Again, the key takeaway from this slide is take one step at a time. Do not rush it, have an incremental approach, and you will figure out how to make things happen. So I'll quickly run through certain examples, and that will give you an idea on how to really solve and tackle some of the environment challenges. You could make use of images and containers where you package everything in the images and containers, create a golden images and containers, that way, you are having a consistent way of creating, managing the environment. So, typically we follow a process which is very meticulous process in terms of, creating those container images. For example, we would have container images which is like an application server would have one golden image, database server would have one golden image, your job server might have one golden image, and any other component might have one golden image, right? The beauty of maintaining golden images, anybody can use it anytime, and you could call it and create your own environment in a fraction of minutes and seconds. So that way, you don't have to really worry about a lot, and you can work as a team to get what you need in terms of environment. Don't be overwhelmed, looking at this slide. This is doable. I mean, test environments, like I mentioned in the very beginning, we have a lot of requirements in terms of creating the backend database, Active Directories, having elastic load balancer and everything, right? So those can be created absolutely on AWS using a lot of automation. You could do it manually. You could make use of the images that I was talking about. That way, you would get your full-blown environment. So once you do it manually and once you know how to package that and make it as part of your automation and run it in the Jenkins pipeline or any other CI/CD tool, it becomes very easy to repeatedly create this environment. It's very fast and very easy to do that. The test environments on your machines. So again, here we're talking about Docker containers, right? What we typically do is, we create Docker containers and push it to JFrog Artifactory. So JFrog Artifactory, again, Jenkins pipeline would call the JFrog Artifactory to pick up the containers and create an environment. So you could literally create environments on your own laptop. You could create environments on the cloud, and you could create anywhere you want. I mean, we create it on our own on-prem data center. We create it on the cloud. We create it on our laptops. I mean, business analyst could have his own environment. A developer could have his own environment, and likewise, anybody who wants can have their own environments. Again, coming to automation, so once we're comfortable and once we start, automating certain things, that's when we start writing our Terraform, Ansible, and Packer codes, where we start developing and pushing to Git repository. And once it's on the Git repository, we will configure Jenkins pipeline to start building the environment. You could start, outputting the machine images and container images, so that way you could, pick up and start creating the test environments, right? So everybody can contribute to this, pipeline. I mean, it will not be DevOps engineer, it will not be a developer, but rather, everybody work together. I mean, this is going to follow a typical DevOps process where you will have, pull request, where you will have all the typical process that needs to be taken care so that, everything is version controlled and managed. So this is one example of Selenium automation pipeline. What is important is to bring the power of scalability to build the power of parallel execution. That's very, very important. What I mean by this is, if you have 100 UI tests that you could run it, and all of them could run in parallel, and if your environment can support it, and the longest duration out of the 100 would take like 3 minutes, then all the 100 tests would be completed in 3 minutes. That's your ETA in terms of automation completion. And all that could happen because of the scalability, because of the infrastructure that you can build it, right? So that's the power of having your own. You had a question?
Right. Is this using like the actual AWS infra, or is it using the data backend?
You could figure out. You could figure out. I mean, you could have it on AWS cloud. You could have it on your own data center. You could do it, using Selenium Grid. You could do it with Amazon services. You could literally do with anything. But what is important? The key takeaway is how do you do it, right? I mean, scalability is important, right? I mean, scalability aspect is very important, and also having the flexibility of running all 100 tests in parallel, that is very important. And also, your product should support 100 concurrent users, right? I mean, those things are very important, right? So one company, where their UI test used to take, hours, days and hours to run, and they brought it down to 16 minutes and eventually to 39 seconds. I mean, 39 seconds, like I said, that's the longest out of the bunch of UI tests that you had. So again, to repeat, if you have 100 tests, and out of 100, If the longest one that would take is 3 minutes, all the 100 tests would be done in 3 minutes. That's the power of infrastructure that we have today, right? And this was actually done in the AWS Lambda, the serverless. So again, serverless, you don't have to worry about a lot of things. I mean, it's going to scale. You don't have to worry under the hood. What kind of instance size should I use? Should I use 4-core CPU, 16 gig RAM, or whatnot, right? I mean, it's going to figure out. You let serverless know what your requirements are. It's going to figure out for you, right? So, but like I said, key takeaway is think on these lines. Extremely important to think on these lines. I have seen where DevOps pipeline, they say, we have a fantastic DevOps pipeline, we have a fantastic UI test, performance test, security test, all part of it, right? But when they ask how long it's going to take, they say maybe 24 to 48 hours. I mean, what good is it, right, if it's going to take 24 hours, right? I mean, faster feedback, I mean, that's gone for a toss, right? So it does not help, right? So that's where it becomes important to think on these lines. How could you harness the power of cloud? How can you harness the power of infrastructure to get what you need, right? Trust me, all these things is going to take a really, really long way in terms of tester coming up with his ideas, tester taking up the ownership and responsibility. A performance testing environment, this topic is going to take at least one day if I have to talk, everything, but I'll quickly kind of, summarize why it's important. We still have time, right? 5 minutes. Okay. So performance testing environment, again, extremely important because, that's a data gathering activity. You need volumes of data, you need sometimes production replicas, you need to scale the agents, you need to run I've been involved in projects where we have run for 100K to 500K concurrent users, and the scale of infrastructure that we needed was, massive. That was many years back. Now it's, pretty easy to do it. But again, the key takeaway is don't have to think about the application, system that you're going to test. Think about underlying infrastructure, what is needed, because today we have teams who manage their own neoload, load runner clusters. They run it on Cube. They have pipeline built around that, so they manage everything. For example, if 100 teams have to use load runner UI to run their test, you have to figure out how the scheduling works, how it gets run on Cube clusters and everything. That is done by testing team. Nobody else does that. So that's extremely important. Cross-browser testing, again, cross-platform, cross-browser, cross-OS, cross-mobile, right? That's extremely important, all I can say, right? Because, you need to create, even if you're talking about Selenium Grid or anything, right? I mean, you got to figure out how many nodes you use, how many users you're going to access, how many teams are going to do that. Again, underlying infrastructure, as a testing team and testers, you will have to figure out, right? Because if you are depending on external team, they'll just dump one blanket environment and go tell you, do everything on this, right? I mean, do everything that's good for you. Device form, I touched upon this, it's pretty easy, and I'll quickly touch upon this. So, test results infrastructure, right? I mean, today, one thing that we are lacking is, we run all kind of tests, right? I mean, we don't know what happens, right? What goes. I mean, you run a test from your pipeline, you have automation testing, performance testing, security testing, everything, right? So the beauty of this slide is, everything comes and gets dumped into RDS. So once it gets dumped to NoSQL database, then you can start building visualization, graphs, reports, and everything. So that way it could start radiating information about quality across your product, right? And you could also build AI and ML on top of it to do predictive analysis and to help you a lot with our overall quality, which is lacking across the industry today. I mean, definitely lacking. I've not seen any, at least majority of the company really focusing on this. So there are many examples where we need, test infrastructure, right? I mean, there are countless examples that I can give where it's important. Ultimately, get to a point where you create one-click environment where somebody could, come, select from a drop-down if they need performance environment, if they need automation environment, E2A environment, select that and click, boom, you get the environment. So get to that point. I know, it's not very easy, but I have seen, teams and companies succeeding in that. So get to that level and, you will eventually succeed. So I'll come back to this question again. So as a tester, how comfortable are you now to talk about or own some parts of test environment? Do you think you're comfortable? Do you, I mean, not even comfortability, but at least are you willing to change that mindset?
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Fantastic. Good. So the key takeaways are, own it, right? I mean, it's your problem. It's who you. I mean, it's something that you need on a day-to-day basis. It's something that will define your success, right? So don't try to run away from it, right? I mean, embrace it, own it, right? And drive it. Collaborate with DevOps, collaborate with architects, collaborate with developers, and drive together so that you all succeed, right? And eventually, succeed, right? I mean, nothing is greater than customer success, right? I mean, nothing is greater than product customer success, right? So, we as a tester figuring out, how do we solve our own problem? People across the company are going to be very, very happy with this approach when you start talking with those lines. So, that's the end, and I want to give credit to President Tigo for helping with the PPT and AWS and Illusion and team. And lastly, about me, I've been working for close to 20 years in this industry. I have worked in Sony, Accenture in the past. Currently, I work in Illusion, a product-based company which is into higher education domain space. We're a market leaders in higher education domain. We have office location and customers across the globe. If you want to get more details about me, please visit my LinkedIn. Yeah, that's about it. I hope I did some level of justice to this presentation.
Any questions, please? So I have one, Mahesh, associated with Mahesh, like looking his post and like, oh, you can do this as a tester, you can do that as a tester. So do follow him. Thank you. Thank you, Mahesh.
Thank you all again.